This morning, I will be speaking from my heart. I will be speaking mainly to those persons who have settled in themselves the pesky question of the belief in the existence of God. I'm really not comfortable here speaking. I'd rather sing, because I'm standing here only because Pastor Chris is absent. But it is not for my ability, it is for my availability. I just said yes when asked. So then, it's all about you, Jesus, and all this is for you, for your glory and your fame. It's not about me, as if I would do things my way. You alone are God, and I surrender to your way. I will speak with you as an ordinary person, as ordinary as the motley crew from which Jesus picked his followers, picked his disciples. Except for maybe two, all of them were unlearned persons. Peter was known as uncouth and to use unlovely words. I will speak from my heart, for as the people recognized in Acts chapter 4, these are simple men. And they said, we cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard. Therefore, I'll try to communicate with you from what I have experienced and what I understand. So then, we asked, what is this gospel to be believed? We have settled the question that God exists. He's a great God. He declares himself, and he says, beside him there is no other. A strong God. A Jewish friend of mine said once to me, oh, you are so confident. I said, I'm confident because I believe in the God I have borrowed from you. But then, this gospel that beautifies people's feet, which is figurative. This gospel is the story of our great creator, the creator of humankind, we believe, and the human beings he provides for, and what he expects from those human beings. The long version of the gospel, which was addressed to Jewish persons at the time, is available for you to read in Acts chapter 2, verses 14 to 42. Peter goes down from the beginning, from God, Moses, and all those believers. But we will take the short version today. I'm also addressing those, after establishing that God is good and powerful, those people who believe that the words in the 66 books that comprise the Bible, that they are not only beautiful literature and beautiful poetry, but that they were written by men inspired by God. And that God, Yahweh, El Elyon, Elohim, speaks through those words to us and speaks to us today. Thirdly, I'm addressing those who believe that God is approachable, that God is responsive, and God can be apprehended by persons, by individuals. That same God says in Isaiah, come now, let us reason together. And we believe that, we hold on to it, that we have an approachable God. And then it goes on to say, with the heart men believe. What then is the heart? I was sort of scared of giving explanation of what the heart is, but I said, I'm here on God's business, I shall try. Because God says, I will give you a new heart. I will put a new spirit within you. The heart then, as I've read many definitions, is your innermost being, the center of your emotions. The heart, some people say, has a reason separate from the regular reason of your brain. Other languages have two words for knowing. For the Spanish, there's knowing, conocer, to know with your mind and your understanding, and saber, to know with your being. So it is this being, this innermost place, this heart, that we believe. In order, we believe in God, that is, in his existence. We want to go a step from there and to believe God, to believe what he says. And he makes those things available to us by doing it himself, by giving us a new heart that will make us understand. Now, in these 66 books, God has promised to do a number of things. He's promised to give you a new heart. He has promised to love you. He has promised to lead you. He has promised in Romans to say that he will conform you into the image of his Son, or to make you as obedient and pliable as Jesus was, to embrace his mission and to continue through the end, even though there were trials and tribulation. God will fix you for that. I once had a believing friend who believed in the existence of God and believed somewhat in God's care for him, but he was so concerned when he fell short, when he, quote unquote, sinned. I suggested to him, why don't you take that up with God? The same God who has promised to be with you, the same God who has promised to shape you. Tell him that you are quite impatient with how he's managing the shaping of you to conform you into obedience. But my friend, throughout his life, he worried about this, and he would not approach God. I do not understand. He could read the Bible. He could repeat many pages to you, but he would not. And even to the last, he has gone on to be with the Lord. Even to the last, he would not console himself that God loved him in spite of his shortcomings, in spite of his so-called sins, which I will steer clear of and not try to define. What are the benefits of believing? The benefits of believing is one, rest. Jesus says to us, and Jesus is God, if you read the Bible and you believe and you extrapolate and you do the simple logic, he says, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Those who believe will be saved. Saved from what? Will be saved from a certain undesirable end, separation from God. I will not mention the word. I will not want to be known as a person who will breathing brimstone and fire. You're saved from the consequences of your choices which lead you in a certain direction to a certain end away from God. If you do not believe and accept the rest, and the salvation is saving you from that end. If you believe, there is also healing for you. And Jesus, the woman, the Syrophoenician woman, she said, even the people outside of your covenant, healing is available to them. If you believe, another benefit for believing is God converses with you, guides you, gives you information. God instructed them in very much detail how to build the temple, how tall, how wide, with what materials. And as you go on, you learn to hear and understand God speaking to you. George Washington Carver, he dealt with the peanut. He said that God told him what was in the peanut and what the peanut could provide. He managed to produce 300 products from the peanut. And we know peanut butter, paper, synthetic rubber. He says he heard. God who made the peanut told him that those things were embodied in the peanut. We take that, we believe it. Now, we also believe when God says, I am the Lord, I am God, I change not. He says that in Malachi chapter 3. But a Jewish person and some other persons who have embraced the Ten Commandments and have ignored the other 376 laws among which the Ten Commandments are embedded, they say God does not change, and this is why they keep the seventh day as the Sabbath. I counter that to say that God has said he has provided another rest. This is the rest that you would not take. He has provided Jesus. If we go to Isaiah chapter 58, he says, this is the rest that I provide for you. Looking after the poor, visiting the sick. This is the Sabbath that I'm asking you to keep. You may read Isaiah 58 if you believe it's the word of God. I counter that also by saying that God remains the same, but his methods change. The Jewish person said, but he swallowed up people, but he killed people. I said, his methods change. He is the same God. He is the same faithful person. He is the same loyal person. He is the same loving person who declared himself in the Hebrew Bible, or what we call the Old Testament. He is the same. He no longer swallows up people who disobey, as Achan did in the Bible. There is no longer an eye for an eye, for a tooth, because Jesus has changed that, extrapolated on that, and there is justice and mercy that was required in the Old Testament is still required now. There are sects that believe in the seventh day. And for not believing that God has changed his method of acceptance, which is pure belief, which Abraham believed and it was counted to him for righteousness, we in this not so new covenant also believe and it's counted to us for righteousness. It has caused great suffering and great divisions, this doubting that God has changed his methods. I, for one, have suffered 47 years of separation from my mother because I chose to go to church on the first day and to honor the risen Lord. 47 years of not being called a daughter. It was hard. But I believed God when he said, if your mother and father forsake you, I will take you up. I believed God when he said that I will place the lonely in families. Look at the wonderful family that I have been placed in. Now, on the other side, there are the effects of doubt. What happens when we doubt, when we do not believe? It is said that there was an area in Nazareth when Jesus was performing his miracles that people were skeptical and they did not believe. And sadly, a verse which it has taken me some time to come with, to accept, it says, and so he did not do many miracles in that area because of their unbelief. Jesus goes on to say, to him who believes, all things are possible. When we doubt, we diminish its power by blessings and healings not being available to people in a whole area because of unbelief. When we do not believe and we doubt his love for us. We do not give him our cares. He says, cast your cares upon me because I care for you. Not your responsibilities to work and to pay your rent and to pay your bills, but your cares, the things that worry you. We fail to do that. We fail to believe God's unending, unswerving, unjudgmental love for us when we doubt. God says he will quiet you with his love. He will joy over you in singing. This is found in Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17. We will not be able to accept his love. We will treat ourselves less than we can, yes, than we really are. Even though we are advised not to be proud, we need to know that we are children of God, we are loved by God, and we would behave and operate differently and not panic very easily if we knew that. Now, there's a third thing which God has declared as the all-powerful God who made the universe, as the all-powerful God who loves us. And he says this in Malachi chapter 3, verse 10. Now, along with God's promises, there are usually benefits. And I am daring to suggest this to you. Even though we do not rely on the law and obedience to the law for our salvation or for the love of God, there are certain benefits to it. And God says, in the same voice that he used in all the reading, I am God and there is none else, I make the world. He says, bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. And try me now in this, and if I will not open for you the floodgates of heaven and pour out for you such a blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it. Now, many people living in this age of grace and believing under the new covenant say they do not have to tithe. You do not have to. It is not a part of your salvation. To me, it's a part of your earthly living. Because God goes on to say, I will prevent pests from devouring your crops, and your vine will not drop fruit. I will protect you. I will keep away the devourer. Now, the benefit for believing this one great example, I was reading in a totally unrelated article that during the Dust Bowl, that great Dust Bowl, those people who had tithes, small churches that had kept records of people who tithes, even though I do not believe that, they found that during the Great Starvation in the Midwest between 1930 and 1940, I do not know how many people have read that, and that sparked a lot of land laws and encouragements that are still in place today, that those people who had tithed, they had enough for themselves and to share for the neighbors. I have experienced a certain protection of tithing also. That I remember I dropped an envelope with my tithe in a busy market in Barbados, right next there. And I had gone home about 4 hours. And I remember that I was looking for the purse with my tithe, and I didn't find it. And I drove back to the market. Market was almost over, it was scanty. I can imagine how many feet must have walked on that envelope, on that purse. that wallet with my tithe in it. And I went back there 4 hours after, and my tithe was still there. I knew of a young lady, also in Barbados, that she tithed on everything she received. If you gave her a bag of candy, she would calculate how much the candy is, and she would pay the tithe. Now we know that the Bible is figurative, so that we know it's not that only that physical food will be in his house, but that there will be people preaching and providing spiritual nourishment in God's house if we tithe. But there is also a caution. In Jesus' time, there were some ardent tithers, some very self-righteous people. And Jesus had this to say to them in Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. He said, "For you have tithed on mint and on cumin, and you have left undone the weightier matters of the law." What are these weightier matters? Justice, mercy, faithfulness. You should not leave the tithing undone, but remember the weighty matters, love, mercy, and justice, that our great God requires this also. Now that I have shared with you the benefits of believing and the negatives of doubting, I'm asking you today, will you say to the Lord, as the father whose son was healed, the son was healed of a dumb spirit in the Bible, he said, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." So if you look inside yourself today and see where there's a little part of unbelief, that you do not fully believe God, that he loves you, that he will never leave you nor forsake you, that he will provide for you, that he will guide you, will protect you, he will feed you, except when you're supposed to fast. God is not going to provide any bread. That you will say, "Help my unbelief." Thank you for listening, and that will be all.